Okay, let's talk about our do now. 5 of the 25 girls on Alden Middle School's soccer team are 7th grade students. Find the percentage of 7th graders on the team. Show 2 different ways of solving for the answer. One of the methods must include a diagram or picture model. So we have to break it down, right? We need to write what we know and label it. We need to count the questions. We have to do that before we can solve. So let's write what we know. 5 of the 25 girls are 7th graders. Find the percentage. Show 2 different ways. So what do I need to write down? Kalia.
5 of the 25 girls.
So when we work with a problem like this, what we need to do is label the whole, the part, and the percent. You're only going to be given 2 of these, and you'll have to find the third. So what are we given first? Are we given the whole?
Yes.
What is it?
25.
25. Are we given a part?
Yes.
What's the part?
5.
5. Are we given a percent?
No.
No. In fact, it says find the percentage, so you know that's the one you're going to have to find. That's the one you do not know. Let's count the questions or the steps. How many things do I need to do? How many things does this question ask me to do? Julie? 2. We have to show 2 different ways to solve it. And one of them has to include a diagram or a picture. So, let's solve it mathematically first. When you have a part and a whole, you can write it as a fraction where the part is out of the whole. So the part is on top and the whole is on bottom. Just like a part to whole ratio written as a value, the part is on top and the whole is on the bottom. That's there for you right here on that board too. So what's the part in this problem?
5.
5. And what's the whole?
25.
25. We need to find the percent. Now a percent is just a fraction when the whole is what?
100.
When the whole is 100, the numerator tells us the percent. So the numerator is what we need to find. What could I do to 25 to get to 100? Tara? Multiply by 4. So what should I do to 5? Multiply by 4. And I get?
100.
So the fraction 20 out of 100 is what percent? 20 out of 100 is what percent?
20%.
Yes, 20%. Now we need to show it a different way. This way has to use a diagram or a picture. Let's use the diagram we learned on Friday. It's like a double number line, but looks more like a tape diagram. So, the whole diagram is always worth what percent? Exactly, 100%. The total is always worth 100%, all of it. We start at 0. Do we know the whole quantity? What's the whole quantity? Go ahead, Tony. What's the whole quantity, Ricardo? 25. The whole quantity is 25. What else do we know that we can label on our diagram? What else do we know, Shay, that we can label on our diagram?
The label that there are 7 students.
Well, a 7th grade student is in 7th grade. That doesn't tell me anything about the quantity, right? They're trying to trick you a little bit with that 7. Julie?
We can split it into 5.
Yes.
We know that 5.
Yes. So Julie says the part that we know is 5 girls. We know that 5 girls are in 7th grade. So we want to show 5 on here. Well, if we want to show 5 on the quantity side of our diagram, we can count by fives until we reach 25. Okay, let's label it 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. We want to use our diagram to find the percent for whatever quantity we need. We've done the same thing all the way across our diagram, meaning we split the top into 5 parts, we also split the bottom into 5 parts. If I split 100 into 5 parts, what am I counting by on the bottom? 25. 25 is 1/4 of 100. Liliana. 20s. Now, I want to know what percent 5 of 25 is. So what do I do with this diagram to figure that out, Dewey?
You look where the 5 is.
Mm-hmm.
Down.
I look where the 5 is. And I go, what percent is that? Oh, would you look at there? It's 20%. Now, I found the same answer with 2 different methods. So I'm feeling pretty confident that the answer is for sure 20%. What would I do if I got down here to the second part, I used a different method, and I found 5 to be equal to 30%?
You're wrong.
Well, what should I do? Yes.
Check your answer.
Mm-hmm. But how?
You could draw one of these.
I could draw it again. Draw another diagram? Sure. What else could I do, Persephone?
Check
Check the multiplication. Check the fractions. Make sure I put the part where the part belongs and the whole where the whole belongs, and I didn't switch them, right? Good. So let's move down to example 2. Example 2 says, of the 25 girls on the Alden Middle School soccer team, 40% also play on a travel team. How many of the girls on the middle school team also play on a travel team? So again, we have a percentage problem. We need to label the whole, the part, and the percent so we know what we're working with and what we need to find. What's the whole in this problem?
25.
Mm-hmm. What's the part in this problem?
You don't know. 40.
We don't know exactly. We don't know. And the percent?
40.
Mm-hmm. 40%. We don't know what part 40% is. That's what we need to find. So, let's solve it 2 ways. It doesn't tell us to solve it 2 ways, but we need to get in the habit of doing that so we check our work. So let's do it mathematically first. This time we have a percent. We don't have a part. Here we had a part and a whole and not the percent. When you don't have a part or you don't have a whole, you cannot start with a complete fraction with the quantities, right? We can start with the percent. We have a percent, and we know that 40% is what fraction, Michaela? 40% is what fraction? 40 over 100, or 40 out of 100. And can I reduce it?
Yeah.
Sure. What can I do right off the bat that you see? Yes, ma'am. I can divide it by 20, right? I could divide it by 10, get rid of those zeros, but then I know I'm going to have to reduce some more. So Kalia figured out a greater common factor, which is 20. So let's divide both sides by 20. And we get what, Shay?
You get 2.
And what's on the bottom?
5.
2 out of 5, or 2/5. Now, because we know the whole, we can create an equivalent fraction to find the part. So I'm going to create an equivalent fraction. What goes on the bottom? The part or the whole?
Whole.
The whole. And what's the whole in this problem?
25.
25. Now all we need to do is find the part, which is what the question asked us to find. How can we turn 5 into 25?
Multiply by 5.
So what do we do on top, Judas? We multiplied 5 by 5 to get 25. What should I multiply 2 by? And I get 10. So we're saying 40% of 25 is 10. 10 girls also play on a travel team. Let's prove it a different way to make sure we're correct. We'll use the same diagram we used in example 1. The whole diagram, all of it, is always worth 100%. We start at 0. Do I have a whole here? Yes, what is it?
25.
What else do I know that I can label? What else can I label, Dewey? The percent. I know I have 40% of these girls that are playing on a travel team. How do I label it on this diagram, Julie?
You would label it by 20.
Yeah, I could count by 20s. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. And we need to know the part of 20 that's equal to 40%. So we need to know this number here. Well, I've split my whole 25 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. So what am I counting by?
5.
Yes, 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So I have found the same answer with both methods. I can feel pretty confident that my answer is correct. And you should be writing in a complete sentence, 10 girls also play on a travel team. I put 2 periods. I don't know why. Sorry. Not ELA. Yes.
Is the travel team also called select?
I have no idea. It doesn't matter. Nah. Okay, turn to page 138. Example 3. Example 3 says, the Alden Middle School girls soccer team won 80% of its games this season. If the team won 12 games, how many games did it play? Solve the problem using at least 2 different methods. So again, we need 2 different methods, and we need to label the whole, the part, and the percent. So, what's the whole?
80.
We don't know. That's right. And in fact, the question says, how many games did it play? Well, that should tip you off, right? How many games did it play? You could interpret that as, how many games did it play in all, right? We know they won 12. That's the part that they won. And what percent of the whole is that 12, those 12 games, Dewey?
80.
Yes, 80%. So now we know what we need to find and we know what we have. What should I start with for the first part if I want to solve it mathematically, Marina? And what fraction can I use? I don't, so I need to use the... How do I make a... Yeah, so remember, if you only have the part and not the whole, you can't really make a fraction with it, right? You know how to turn a percent into a fraction. The percent is the numerator and 100 is the denominator, right? Let's reduce it. How can I write this in a simpler form? Dasani, how can I write this in a simpler form? Look at it. What can I do to it? What can I divide the numerator and the denominator by? 20, yep. Again, I could say 10 and mark out these zeros, but I know I would have to reduce again because 8 and 10 both have a common factor of 2. So yeah, I can divide by 20. What's 80 divided by 20? What is 100 divided by 20? 5. So 4/5. Now I need to find the whole. So when I set up an equivalent fraction, where does the 12 go? Where does the part go? Yes. Yes, the numerator. And we need to find the whole, which is the denominator. Don't forget, you can always look up here, guys. It's also on the board. Okay. How can I find this missing number? How can I find the denominator? Go ahead, Shay. How can I find the denominator, Judas? How can I get from 4 to 12? So what should I do on the bottom? Yeah, and I get? Bam, 15. They won 12 out of 15 games. Let's double check ourselves by drawing a diagram and seeing if we can get the same answer. The whole diagram is always worth what percent? 100. What's the whole quantity? Interesting. What's the whole quantity? This is exactly like filling in this, right? What's the whole quantity? We don't know. We can start at 0. We don't know the whole quantity. What else do we know that we can label on our diagram, Davian? But can I look at this and tell where to put 12? We don't have a hole, so I can't really tell where the 12 goes. So what can I label, Ricardo? So I should count by what on the bottom? 2s?
4s.
4s?
20s.
20s. 20s. If I count by 4s, we're going to have, what, 25 lines in here? That's a lot, right? Let's do 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So would it be a big deal if I counted by 10s?
No.
Not really. You could count by 10s. Right? But you don't want to be too off because then you're going to end up with a ton of numbers. It's going to get real confusing. Okay. And we know 80% is equal to what part? Say it.
4/5.
Ooh, what? We know 80% is equal to what part? 12. I see where you're coming from with the 4/5, but we don't know 4/5 of what, so that doesn't really help us, right?
Oh.
We know that 80% of the whole is 12. Okay? Now, when you have a part and not the whole, what I like to do to figure out what we're counting by is pretend like your part is your whole. Let's cover up the rest of the diagram, okay? Now we've split 12 into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So what should I count by? 3. Good. 3, 6, 9, 12. And what's the whole? 15.
Yay.
So yes, we found the same answer both ways. We can be pretty confident that it's correct. So if I want to write this as a complete sentence, how many games did the team play? How do I write that as a complete sentence, Leilani? The team played 15 games. Okay, let's look at exercise 1. Exercise 1 is on the next page, page 139. I'm going to do the first one, the first row with you. You're going to do the next 3 rows on your own. So there are 60 animal exhibits at the local zoo. What percent of the zoo's exhibits does each animal class represent? So 30 of the exhibits are mammals. 30 out of what total?
60.
30 out of 60. So how can we find the percent? Yes. 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 Yes, ma'am. What do you think? What happens if you're wrong? What happens if you're wrong?
Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing happens. Kalia, take a guess. What do you think?
Reduce.
Sure, you can reduce it. What else could I do? If I didn't want to reduce it, I could leave that step out. Javier,
Divide.
I could just divide.
You can take off the zeros. Right?
I could, but you don't have to. 30 divided by 60 is the same as 3 divided by 6. So when you're finding the percent like this, you don't have to reduce.
So we got the
Okay, now look. 30 divided by 60 is equal to 0.5, but it doesn't ask us for a decimal, it asks us for a percent. So look right here. We have a decimal, we're moving to a percent. What do we do to find the percent? Jordan?
Multiply that number right there, 0.5
By?
to 100.
By 100. And we get
50. Oh, 5.
50%. Go ahead and do the second row on your own. I'm going to give you about a minute. Move on to the third row if you finish before a minute's up. Go ahead. Yes, sir. Question? Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the second row. Yes, ma'am? Let's go ahead and talk about it. Now, remember, this last row, they don't leave you a bunch of room to work it out, and you do need to show your work. So in the last row, I need you to show your work. Show me what you did. Even though you used a calculator, I want to know how you found it. So for reptiles and amphibians, the second row in the table, what can I do to find the percent of the total that is reptiles and amphibians? Dewey?
15 over 60.
Okay, so we're dividing 15 by 60, and we get,
0.
we do, and what do we do to turn that into a percent? Times 100. And we got 25%. Who can tell me how to do the third row? How can I do the third row, Julia? Yeah. 12 by 60, good. Now what? Raise your hand if you were able to get to the last row. Nice. Tony, tell us how you did it.
I put 3 over 5.
3 over 5?
No, like 3 divided by 5.
Why?
Because there's
Oh, it's not.
How many in the whole zoo are there?
60.
60, so it should be 3 over 60. And what would I do next? What would I do next?
Divide 3 by 60.
Yes, 3 divided by 60. And you get 0.05. Now what?
Times 100.
Yes. So our answer is 5%. 5%. Yes, 5%. Now always go back and ask yourself if it makes sense, if it's reasonable. Is it reasonable that 30 is half of 60?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it reasonable that 15 is a fourth of 60?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's half of half. It's half of 30. Half of half is a fourth. Yeah. Is it reasonable that 12 would be 20% of 60?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is it reasonable that 3 would be 5% of 60?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small number. It's a small part of the whole. Sure. Now, if we had made a mistake and written 50% here, if you go back and ask yourself, is 3 50% of 60, you should catch yourself and say, no, 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 I did something wrong, right? Good. So, let's look at number 2. Number 2 deals with shopping, prices, okay? We solve these problems the same way. We're just dealing with money now. So, if a sweater is regularly $32 and it is 25% off the original price this week, would the amount the shopper saved be the part, whole, or percent? So what I like to do is write them out, whole, part, and percent. What's the whole?
30.
Yes, 32. What's the part?
25. Wait, no.
We don't know, exactly. We don't know. And what's the percent?
25%.
25%. So would the part that would the amount that the shopper saved be the whole, part, or percent? The part, exactly, the part. What the question is asking is, what part, how much is 25% of $32? So how much would that shopper save by buying the sweater this week? And we need to show 2 methods. So again, 1 and 2. We have written what we know. We have labeled it. Let's solve it mathematically first. What can I do? What can I do to solve this problem mathematically? Yes.
Fraction.
Use a fraction, right? And what fraction should I start with?
25.
I don't have the part, so I can't make a fraction out of the part and the whole. I can make a fraction out of the percent, which, like Julie said, is 25 out of 100. Can I simplify this?
Yes.
Sure. What can I write it as?
Well, you could divide it by 25.
I could divide it by 25. And Persephone, what would I get? 25 divided by 5 is?
Oh, wait, 5.
25 divided by 25 is? 1. And 100 divided by 25 is? 4. So 1/4. 25% is equal to 1/4. Okay, do we know the part or the whole? The whole. So the whole is $32. Does that go on top or bottom? Bottom. We need to find the part. So how did I get from here to here? What do I do on top?
Multiply 8.
And I get
8.
8 what? 8 what?
$8.
Dollars. That's so sad.
We started laughing because we were thinking that this
I
is
heard.
exciting.
Okay, for the second way to solve, let's use the diagram. Okay. What's the whole diagram always worth? 100%. What's the whole quantity? 32. Remember, you can always look back at your list because you've written what you know and you've labeled it. Okay, you always start at 0. Yes, go. Huh? Oh. Okay, now what else do we know that we can label on our diagram? Do we know a part of the quantity or do we know a percent? A percent. And what's the percent that we know? 25%. So how many pieces should I divide the diagram into? 4. Good. And I can count by 25, of course. I want to know the part that is 25% of the whole. So I need to find this number. I've split 32 into 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So what should I count by? 8. We found the same answer both ways.
Is this what our homework is gonna be?
We'll talk about homework. Homework is going to be a review for the test. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So turn to page 140. On page 140, you'll find exercises 3 and 4. You're going to work on these with your partner at a level 1. I'm coming around to make sure you are writing what you know and you're labeling it. You're counting the steps and you're finding the right part of the problem. Go ahead.